introduce you to our first speaker. Carl, over to you.
Thank you very much, Tim. Let me just take a second so I can share my screen. Right, to get this up. All good?
Yeah, all good. Thanks, Carl.
Excellent. So thank you very much for joining this at lunchtime. My name is Carl. I'm going to talk about the importance of social construct in maintaining high-performing team. Those are some of my details. I tend to mumble sometimes, and if you hear kids screaming in the background, that's my kids playing. Apologize for that, and this is probably going to become the new normal for a couple of weeks. So who am I? Well, I founded Novoda in 2009. We started off as an agency model that designed and built mobile products. And we have slowly started to move towards a more consultative approach in which we help scale mobile team. And those teams tend to be distributed with the clients that we work with. As you can see, we worked as much as with Tesco, building tablets to Periform, which had about 50 million active users per month. Now, when it comes to distribution, as I mentioned, a lot of our teams are distributed both from a client-side perspective, but as much as Novodans, they are distributed across Europe. We first opened our second office in Berlin. I think that was back in 2014 or 13. And from there on, it kind of expanded to places such as Sevilla, Mallorca, Southampton, Liverpool, and so forth. And this is quite interesting because every time we run a survey with all our employees, the remote benefit has always been one of the best benefits of working for Novoda. So this is something we've been doing for many, many years. I mean, you can see the stats here, 25,000 spent traveling per year is probably not good for the planet, might be better later on for the travel industry when we come out of this COVID crisis. But it's kind of it's interesting how we work as a structure, as a company, especially when we work with clients that are also distributed across Europe. We also have someone working from, as you can see the arrow on the left there, working from Mexico City. And sometimes people just work randomly from their holiday homes in Greece and so forth. Okay. So this talk is not about mental health, no toolings and setups. There's plenty of other presentation about this. This is much more about impacting your remote culture, and really taking it to the next level, try to enjoy the remote environment, because this is really, in a way, the new normal, okay? Now, high performance is what does it mean? It was coined, I think, in the 50s from my recollection, became popular in the 80s, then left out of popularity in the 90s, and then resurrected with the kind of tech industry. But a lot of, it surrounds strong leadership, open communication, effective decision, making, good goals, conflict, trust. But most importantly, and this is something that was studied by Google, head of business at Google, was the concept of psychological safety. Okay. Now I'm going to touch a bit on what this means, but this talk is about the construct, and construct as opposed to physical object, and the real world construct is what happens in your mind, which are the toolings that you have in order to help with those psychological safety, structure, trust, and conflict in a remote environment. Okay, so let's get in the thick of it. Let's start with the first conceptual construct that I have here, which is the feeling of being left out. So if there's one thing that you should remember from my talk, at least, is that what we've noticed, in our experience, is a good team, okay, that works well together, that is cohesive, have a kind of shared decision mechanism, and they are participative in that decision mechanism. Now, what we realized is that when we worked on site at clients, this dynamic happened just naturally, because you would go into a meeting room or you would have those conversations naturally, and the decision would happen out of those discussions. In a remote structure, it's much more difficult. So as soon as we would work from the Novoda office, decision will be taken, imposed on the team, and that would yield a strong feeling of detachment from the project, annoying, especially if the decision was against what you believed is best. But most, the most problematic here is not that the decision was made against what you thought was better. The problem is that you were not involved in a decision that has an impact on you. And we've seen this more than once between, let's say, the Berlin office and the office in London, or people working remotely. This is a strong, like, how can you solve that? How can you make sure that when decision is taken and the blast radius of that decision, you take into account everyone that is involved in that discussion? So, I know I mentioned no toolings, but I just want to mention that calendar is a really important power tool here. And just to kind of go through it very quickly, the points that matters is the guests. Invite everyone in which the decision will have an impact on. And if they're not important to that argument, you could have them as optional. The reality is just the fact that you are invited to the discussion means that you feel more engaged and participative, even though you might not even join the meeting. It's like the fact that you have the ability which matters. And this is, even further through than if you work remotely, you need to have obviously remote link, being Meet in this case, but obviously Zoom or Skype or whatever other tool you're using. Make sure that every single calendar invite has the ability for the participants to join in that discussion. Then finally, like, the description of the meeting is also important. What we really liked and what we thought was really interesting with Google Meet and its integration with calendar is we record every single meeting. And that means at the end of the event, the video is actually attached to that calendar invite. This is extremely powerful because, again, if you pushed a decision and you either disagree or don't really understand the narrative to which the decision came about, you can go back and watch the video. And this time, even in 2x in speed, so a 40 minutes meeting could be a 20 minutes meeting, really. And then you have you have the feeling of participative, and this creates a much cohesive structure of decision making. Okay, we also use Basecamp to basically summarize everything from that meeting, and we post that link, or we try to post that link, into that calendar invite, which says this is everything that was discussed with the task and next steps. Okay, how are we doing with time? Okay, now that decision has been made, the project is going extremely well. It's really important to be over communicative and celebrate wins and recognize people. When you're in the office, it's much easier to just meet someone and say thank you, well done, and so forth. Especially if you're like me, you like to wander around and just talk randomly with people. Obviously, in a remote environment, this makes it much harder. Okay, so we use Slack. I mean, this is a Microsoft team, and I expect that everyone in this webinar has some form of tooling to chat with other people. And we have a thanks channel in which we just thank people for everything and nothing at the same time. It's really important for this to be minor as much as major. Being the fact that somebody helped you with a slide, or the fact that you want to recognize somebody that worked at Novoda for 1.5 years, this type of behavior in which every single day there's people recognizing each other, create this environment, that makes it much nicer to work in. The use of emojis have taken shape a lot in Slack. It's funny how much this can actually improve communication, like being strong or happy and high five and so forth, just through an icon, which doesn't require you to kind of expand too much. It could just be one sentence. Again, this is really important to have this type of behavior within your teams, to celebrate the people that work and to celebrate anything and everything. Now, culture, okay, that's a difficult point. I mean, it's hard to kind of pinpoint what culture is within the company. I mean, it's a set of behavior and beliefs that people adhere to. And as really, you cannot force culture upon people. People need to willingly join that type of culture. But you can still hack it, okay? In this case, this was last Friday, by the way, we decided to all dress up in suits. Or not everyone, as you can see, some wear hats, but you have like 4 bow ties, some flower hats and so forth. It's quite interesting how those things happen. Somebody will just randomly push a message into Slack, say, well, as everyone's working from home, maybe we should try to do something different this Friday. Maybe we should wear some formal clothes, and there you go. 3 days later, everyone comes together and try to behave in a cohesive manner. And in reality, this is very culturally, this kind of like enhance this feeling of belonging, and obviously that cohesion creates better productivity because people are much more engaged in the day-to-day of the business. Okay, now all this can only function from a position of trust and empathy. I mean, like the reality is, and this is true being like remote or not, strong performing team trust each other. Trust is such an important concept in good team, and trust can only come from a point of empathy, especially if you're managing the team or if you're managing business. Okay, and like empathy comes from care, and care goes beyond professionality. And you cannot only care when there's bad moments. You have to care on a constant basis. And the more you kind of ask those little questions, those kind of like, hey, what's up? How are you doing? It's a difficult time. What's your feeling about this? The easier it is to attack difficult periods. For instance, if you're managing people, or if you run something and you haven't spoken with some of the people within your team for let's say a couple of weeks, and suddenly you send a message, it's kind of ominous. Okay, so it's important to always like ping everyone every now and then, say hello, how you doing, but it can only function if you actually care really strongly about the people you speak to. And then, things happen, like socializing. This is like when you have a really strong remote culture, people start doing things together, which I found amazing, which in this case was, I think, last Thursday, Shwena, one of our people living in Berlin, decided to cook with the rest of the business. So she sent a calendar invite with the ingredients necessary for doing, I don't remember exactly the name of this, like this Indian dish, and everyone was participating via a hangout, cooking and creating those dishes and then posting it later. Again, this aspect is so important because when you socialize together, then you work better together. Like the aspect that professionality today is only about the work performance, it's not true. It's about like doing things together, going through a journey together. And those events are really important to embrace this type of behavior. And finally, you need to be yourself and be vulnerable. Okay, you have to come in and talk about yourself from a position of vulnerability, because that creates then trust, and then that creates kind of open discussion. In this, for instance, we do something called Hack and Tell at Novoda, which is let's say half an hour presentation that anyone can put into the calendar for everyone or anyone else to join. We ask every new employee to do a Hack and Tell, again, like via a remote conference tool that we record, to present themselves. Some present their professional experiences, but the majority would actually present themselves. That is like where they come from, what they love, what they like, and so forth. And obviously then that creates, again, this feeling of togetherness that leads to better productivity. And while I was creating this, I saw like 170 recorded Hack and Tells that is currently in YouTube. I mean, it's public, but it's not listed, which kind of represent twice the entire series of Game of Thrones, like the number of hours. It's like you could watch all the Hack and Tells of Novoda that was produced in the last 4 years, for doing 5 days nonstop. This is the amount of content that we generated, talking either about ourselves or topics of interest. A lot of them are obviously relating to the day-to-day of the job, but more than anything, it's really random and personal discussions. By the way, that knife over there is well, butter knife. It's my hack and tell on whittling. I did one presentation on how to whittle because I love whittling, and that's something that my grandpa taught me when I was going to Sweden when I was young. And that's about it. Okay, so to conclude, over communicate and involve people in decision making, celebrate wins, hack your culture, trust people, be humane, and be vulnerable. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it was entertaining at least. Now I will let Matteo take over with his second talk.
Just a quick reminder to everyone, if they have any questions, do drop them in the Q&A feature in the Zoom video. But I'll let Matteo do the talking now.
And thank you, Tim, as well.
Just a second. Here we go. Okay, so sorry, I need to start sharing my screen. It completely disappeared as usual. Here we go. Oh, no, sorry, did a mess. Here we go. So hopefully you can all share and see my screen. So hopefully, let's hope so. Anyway, hi, I am Matteo Collina from Nearform, at Matteo Collina on Twitter. Please follow me so I can hit my growth on social media, whatever. That's the most important part, you see. No, I'm joking. I'm here today to talk about keeping your team connections and how we do that at Nearform. First of all, I just wanted to present myself. Hi, I've been working remotely for 6 years. So I think I gained a little bit of experience, and I've been working remotely for those past 6 years at Nearform. So it's one of those things where, that's been all of my journey. In a part of the journey, I met Carl doing a project in London. So it was very, very interesting. So we decided to throw this together. So on top of that, I've also spoken at 60+ conference between Europe, North America, and Asia. So a lot of conference, a lot of traveling. You can find me on planes and on airport lounge, minus now, we are all locked up. So whatever. So yeah, so I've been at Nearform so Nearform was founded in 2011. And we are now 156 people in 27 countries, which is a little bit on the, very hard to manage scale, considering all the different possibilities. We are scattered. We are a lot through Europe, but we also have people in South Africa, for example, and then people in South America, a lot of people in different states in the US, India, and Canada, and everywhere. We typically hire by time zone, by the way. So we have stopped hired by location. We are just hired by time zone. That's the most important thing for us. What we do, we build applications. So we're using modern web technologies. We work a lot with some media and media companies, telecoms, finance as well, but we can list those for obvious reason. And we have really root and self in the open source and community, in the open source world and community, especially on the Node.js project. So the first, I'm going to arrange this presentation, sharing a bunch of tips or how we do things anyway. So the first one that I'm going to tell is about keeping your camera on, and always keep your camera on. This is one of the greatest things that's one of the most important things. If you don't keep your camera on, you cannot convey and convey the human touch, and you're just a voice. But if you keep your camera on, you can start hand waving, or you can start smiling, or you can just unwave more, because I'm Italian, so whatever, you probably have guessed that, right? And you can see that out the shoulder, or I'm slouching, you can see exactly, you can convey a thing or two. So and then you can create you can create a group of people, and you can move and you can assemble them and have them work together, essentially. So it's very important. As Carl said, it's very important to do public congratulations and celebrate publicly very loudly. And however, it's also as important to give encouragement and privately and quietly, especially on during one-on-ones and in a more subdued fashion. Somebody, you know, receiving global company-wide shame is not nice at all for anybody. So let's not do that. But instead, provide the encouragement privately. But public team meetings are a really right place to say how great a team was, how great some project has been, and so on and so forth. Going back to criticism, it's very important to make suggestions in a positive manner. And you know, you want to share ownership and share responsibilities. So having somebody saying no without giving a proper explanation on why no, or why so you can say don't do this, is not a good answer. Okay, you might want to say do that instead because of, you know, the sun is shining. I don't know, I'm just making it up. So we typically recommend, when you want to give some this level of criticism, to maybe try to give it in maybe on a call, or trying to convey it lightly in a lightweight, because, you know, putting something in writing might be a little bit too heavy to some extent. And normally consider that the tone of voice in writing can be perceived widely different, again, because there's not that human touch to some extent of something that you would have said in a meeting. One of my favorite question is all about saying I didn't understand. Now, I'm probably be the dumbest person in near firm, because I always tell everybody, oh, I didn't understand that. And I keep asking the stupid questions. And it's, you know, this is because the critical analysis of any problem is essential for determining the best solution. And if the moment you, you know, asking dumb questions and asking people to refine certain topics, it's important because in that way, you know, you remove the fact that anybody can ask the dumb questions. Okay, everybody's allowed to not understand something. So you know, you don't want to create a climate in your company or your team where you reach a moment where, you know, people are afraid to ask clarifying questions, and then you enter up. When you are, you know, 2 weeks in on a project and something comes up, or a month in on a project and something comes up, and then one of your colleagues says, oh, I finally understood. And then you're just, damn, we have lost 1 month. Okay. So you really want to avoid that moment. So ask the dumb questions. It's very important. As Carl said, it's really important to keep the discussion public, to record meetings or take minutes and discuss important topics in writing. You need to be able to let people that could not join that discussion for whatever reason to be able to. We are a huge fan of Zoom. This is the tool that you're using. Now you might have seen that there's people criticizing Zoom or whatever. I don't know. It works great for us. So I can't say anything. You know, it just works well. You can just hit the record button. You get a link on the cloud, and it just works. So, and then once you have recorded the video or take minutes and so on, like circulate them as much as possible. So anybody that have an opinion can actually join that and see what was discussed. And this is one of the greatest thing that you can do. And it's a little bit transformative, even on the decision-making process, because, you know, you to some extent, you didn't need to be there to be contributing something. One of the latest things is it's very important to keep being social, and we are social animals. We are apes, to be honest, but that's the biggest topic. And what you want to do is you want to keep the social, even though we are all social distancing right now, we need to be socially very much connected. And what we do, for example, at Nearform, we do every other Friday a remote water cooler session, which essentially everybody joins a Zoom call and they are randomly connected with some other people in a breakout room, and they are completely and separately with people that possibly have not met, or they're not talking in their day-to-day, which is actually very nice and a nice way to discuss this. We also do a brown bag session, which is the same thing as an I can tell and so on, and all of that is recorded as well. Last but not least, it's good morning. So say good morning and good evening, goodbye at the end of your day. Okay, tell others that you are available if they need to ask you questions, and if they want you to, if you're part of the same team, you're working together. So it's a good way to signal that, hey, my day has started and I'm here if you need me. So it's very, very, very important. And also, if you're going away for 2 hours to go to the doctor, everybody's working remotely, so now it's fine. Well, probably not now, but overall. So you can just say maybe AFK, away from keyboard, or something like that with the rest of your peers or the rest of the team. Don't annoy the company. Just you're the person, the people that you are working together sooner, more your shorter team. So at Nearform, we are a remote company. We are divided in 27 countries. So one of the things that we have seen is that you need to meet your peers every once in a while. So for all of you that just started to work remotely now and do remote working, actually it's very nice. It's probably not needed because you are used to meet your colleagues every day at the office. But for us that we have been working remotely for a long time, you might never meet some people, or you might have never talked or have a chat with some of your colleagues. So it's very beside your team. So it's very important that the company meets up, and we try to meet all together once per year. Now this year is going to be very tricky, so probably it's not going to happen. But we also try to have every team meet every quarter, because if you don't doing remote team bonding is actually very hard. So we have seen that this mixed approach works very well. It's basically a big party. That's what it is. We do a little bit of training though, so yeah, that's good. One of the things that they just wanted to say before finish is that remote work works really well if you have people at your company that lead by example. And this is one of those very important parts, because you need to trust your people. You need to trust your colleagues and employees to do their part. And it's actually very, very important. And also want to say that glue work become one of the most important bit in a remote organization. The person that organizes a meeting, the person that makes sure that the meeting comes to a conclusion, comes to a decision, the discussion gets done. And now all those people are typically not, you're not really aware of. In most organizations, you're not aware of the amount of sheer work that they do just to make everybody productive. At Nearform, what we have seen working well for us is we typically go and promote people that are exceptionally good at glue work. So we see and recognize and try to identify those people, so that those people are actually our most important people. Anyway, I just wanted to thank everybody for this. I hope I'm on time. I don't know. I didn't keep my clock, so hopefully so. And if you have any questions, please send me an email, matteo.collina@nearform.com, or check out our website, or also on Twitter. I'm always on Twitter tweeting useless stuff, so you might want to ask me a question or two there later on after this is finished. For questions right now, use the Zoom feature. So thank you, and I'll give the mic back to Tim for the panel discussion.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Matteo. Thank you very much, Carl. That was very insightful. I can see questions coming in already, which is awesome. I wanted to take this moment to now introduce Daniele. Daniele is entering the panel discussion as an additional voice beyond the two that we've already made. Daniele, perhaps you could introduce yourself quickly.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Daniele. I'm an Android developer, and I've been working for Novoda from Italy, so full-time remote for the last 3 years or so.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Right, so yeah, if you do have any further questions, drop them down in the Q&A. I'm going to be curating them, and I'm going to actually kick off with a question immediately around both Matteo and Carl. Carl, this is a question for you to start off with because you spoke first. Both of you talked about social construct or creating like water cooler moments. But the title of this whole webinar is around how high performance. I think an obvious question, but hopefully you'll be able to tackle, is the contradiction between all of these meetings and then being high performance.
To say directed to me, yes?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of book about meetings. There's one that is called Death by Meetings, which is quite good. So outside of remote work, this applies as well. Actually, physically, I realized in the last couple of weeks when everyone went remote that actually my days were even harder to manage, and I can still not scientifically explain why. But for some reason, suddenly I'd like more meetings because I think more people needed time, or before it could be like a meeting with 3 people. Now it's kind of more individual. I think like you have to be very strong in the way that you communicate. You have to be okay. As a presenter, like let's say a calendar is really important. I would try to set it to half an hour, small events. Be very specific when you come and you join the event. At the moment, like every first 10 minutes is about discussing the outbreak rather than discussing the topics of interest. So being very rigorous on the way that you run those meetings with the intention of coming out with a conclusion and the next step. I think also it's good to basically say no to events that are not useful for yourself. Or if you go with what we mentioned, you can say, look, I don't have time, just send me the summary, but thank you for inviting me. So you have to be very kind of rigorous in the way that you time manage yourself, but more so than when you work from a office, which is, yeah. I'm not sure if this answered like the question of high performance, but when it comes to meeting management, it's really important to do that well. There are some tools out there as well that kind of reschedule your meetings to make sure they are packaged in the morning or something similar. But you have to take an intentful step on how to manage your time more so than otherwise. Thank you.
Matteo, number one question, the top question on the Q&A here is around, basically, it looks like the companies are being thrown into the situation where now they have to remote work and they're not going to be used to it. So, you come from a position where you've been working remotely for 6 years, right?
Yes.
And so the number one question is very much like, what's your top tip for people, companies who aren't used to it?
So my top tip is trust. So trust your people, trust your instincts, and trust, your trust. And to some extent, trust needs to be earned, and trust can go away. And it's a very important asset to have in a company. So I would say trust that your folks are going to do their best, and don't try to be the watchdog and ask them, hey, what did you do today? Hey, what did you do today? Hey, what are you doing this afternoon? And so on and so forth. But really trust them to to be productive. And this is something that was kind of lacking also. That's often not lacking in office savvy companies. You know, there is the manager that needs to watch that everybody is working. So once upon a time, I was working with somebody that used to watch a soccer match, recording of soccer match during working hours. And so that is the bad example of trust. Okay, so don't be that person, and do your best while at home. Now, this being said, this current situation is not a working remotely or work from home. This is, to be clear, it's way more normally, it's way more organized. People don't have kids at home, don't have strange situations. You typically can organize yourself to have a very quick, very home just for yourself to be able to do this properly. So I have a room for me for when I work. So I'm, you know, very, all of this is okay. So I just want to say that don't expect 100% productivity right now, because that's very hard to reach.
That kind of leads on to another question in the Q&A that's aimed around like remote working in local offices, but also local shared offices, co-working spaces. Daniele, I know that you've got some experience in that. So what would you, in terms of responding to those, like what's your setup? How do you find it?
Yeah, exactly. So I have to say that working from home is not exactly for me, because I did it for the first 5 or 6 months when I moved back to Italy, and honestly I was feeling a bit too lonely, but that's a total personal thing. So I started looking into and started working first from a co-working space, and then I organized with other people from that co-working to rent our own office. So with other freelancers, other people working remote for different companies, different sectors, we were just working from this shared office. I said where because at the moment we are all locked in at home. So we cannot do it in this period, but as soon as this situation will evolve, we will go back working from that office, which again is not a Novoda office, it's another office. So I still have this separation between being at home and being working while still being remote.
A lot of people right now are going to have that kind of drastic change in scenario, either in an office to somewhere else. You talked about moving country and then working home to a co-working office. Like, how did you combat that kind of drastic change, and how long did it take you to react, to adapt? Sorry, to adapt.
Yeah.
Daniele.
So I would say that, but let's say for me it was good already, because as Carl mentioned, we were pretty used to remote working, given the fact that we had more offices in different countries. So even having a team split between London and Berlin, you are already working remote, even if you are working from the same offices of the company. So that helped already in regards to communication, remote practices, etc., etc. Then on the personal side, like being a bit too lonely at home, it took a few months to adapt for this. At the moment, like being forced to work from home, there are a lot of things that people can do. But I think the most important one is to search these kind of social interactions that both Carl and Matteo especially mentioned. So having improvised chats, improvised video calls with other coworkers, etc.
Awesome, thank you. And then Matteo, I think question for you. How do you recruit remotely? Companies can't just like stay still at this period of time. It'll be growing and looking. How would you handle that?
So that's so right now it's a really bad moment to be out of a job, and it's probably a really good moment to hire people if you need to hire people. So please, if you have some positions, hire them. There is a lot of companies having layoffs right now. So please, if you think you're going to need, you can actually snatch some really, really impressive talent that is being currently let go for, and not so because of the situation, so the business downturn. So if you need somebody, please look. By the way, we are hiring, so that's, you know, that's to say. Just to give you a little bit of stats of our recruiting operation, I think we have hired somewhere like maybe 40 people last year, all remotely. So that's kind of to give you a rough number. It's a really it's really hard. That we took so many years to actually iron out a process that would work well. One of our greatest thing is we focus most of our chats focus on understanding if this person could actually be it's actually a fit culturally with the company. So more than actual code or because we are a coding company, but that's technical challenge or whatever, we focus more on understanding if this person could actually this will be a cultural fit. And we have we do multi-stage things, but that is probably the most consistent part. Then we also expect them to be good at their job, but it's one of the greatest part is that is problematic. We also, after somebody joins, so this is typical, we do 3 steps, I think, or something like that, 3 or 4 steps, depending on the position. So, but again, cultural fit is the critical, most important part. Yep. Then what else we've got? Then the other bit that is probably very important is it's, especially if you are remotely, you need to consider the fact that it's possible to not make it's easier to some extent to not make the right decision. So this needs to be clear for everybody to some extent, so that if the right decision is not okay, it's actually better to if this is not working for the other person or for both, it's probably better to part ways as soon as possible, because it's not working remotely can be pretty bad for somebody because of the loneliness, because of a lot of things. So it's pretty good to react to those problems as quickly as they arise. And we have a full framework that I'm not really qualified to talk about to actually help new recruits and new hires on the onboarding process, and so that they avoid that big crash moment if they were used to work in an office before.
Great, thank you. Carl, you spoke about avoiding feeling left out. And one of the questions we have here is also about any tips for combating loneliness and social connection. I want to pair that question along with how do you identify if people potentially are from a management's perspective? So from an individual, how do you avoid feeling lonely, feeling left out? But from a management perspective, how do you actually identify those people if you don't see them in an office and if you don't have that natural connection with them? How do you identify and combat that from both sides?
Okay, I'm not sure if I'm the best qualified to answer this question, because I have 2 kids and a wife, and I have the opposite problem in which that at the moment, like I do like half an hour meetings, and then I go with half an hour of the kids running around and then going back to meeting and so forth. Saying that, though, from a social aspect, what I've seen and what I've done and has been much more prominent now is stuff that I used to do with ex-employees, for instance, which would be like remote beers, and like you would just like literally, and I'm not sure for you, but like I just started calling much more people recently, from old friends to old colleagues, or just because, you have less social interaction. And I think your behavior then is just to seek that. And because you cannot come out or go to the pub or whatever, you actually just take your phone and call people, which is something that is less and less popular, but still works out quite well to just have a chat with an old friend from university or whatnot. So I think those kind of like social interactions are really important. Social beers. We did like Netflix party. We did, it's my nephew's first year's birthday. my sister lives in Madrid, and she did like a Zoom birthday party, which was very funny and strange. But you see, you have like, it's funny how people then just adapt. So I think it's like there's a lot of those behavior out there, so it's just ensuring that you have that within your company. As I mentioned about like the cooking, or let's say we did a pub quiz, organized through the business, like it's there in the Novoda's calendar. You see, it wasn't like outside of the calendar. It's like have all those kind of social interaction which are not relating to work be broadcasted, and you need to endorse them and try to push them yourself. If you're managing people, across different teams, and also on the point that I presented is you have to I care for people. Like every now and then I'm just like, oh, I haven't spoken with this person for a while. I haven't asked how that person is. So I'll just ping and say, hey, is everything okay? Just because I care. And if you try to do that, I mean, it might sound a bit fake, but I'm trying to do like at least ping one person a day, randomly. And we also have like other tools like don't be a stranger, which kind of randomly connect people on Slack and stuff like this. So there are behaviors, but the reality is just like be over communicative, just ping people for no intention. Like if every time you talk with someone is because you have an intention that relates to business, that's problematic, because then you don't foster social engagement, and that's what you want. You want to have much more social engagements.
So just then moving that on to Daniele then, because you talked about wanting to be in a co-working space so you'd avoid that, you'd have that, people around you. Now that you're back at home, you don't have that anymore. How are you combating that potential loneliness?
Yeah, so exactly what Carl says. So trying to get more spontaneous chats with other colleagues. I'm still contacting the other people that I was in the office with, so just to keep that the connections as well. But especially with the co-workers at Novoda, yeah, we have a lot of improvised meetings, chats, especially like coffee chats, like having a virtual coffee together without talking about work, just talking about other stuff. Yeah, that's a lot.
Awesome. And then back to you, Matteo. You talked about recruiting. We've got a question here about onboarding remote people. So you've passed all the interviews, you're getting them on board. Day one, week one, month one. How do you onboard them when you're not in the same room together?
So that is one of the things that that's very specific to what we do at Nearfirm. It also depends on, I can speak about onboarding software developers. There is a part that is similar for other things, but that's where I know more. So I can't keep that too generic. So first of all, before somebody joins, we ship all, if it's an employee instead of a contractor, depends on the role. So we have both employee position and contractor position. And if the person we are hiring is an employee, beforehand we are shipping them, all the equipment that they need. So laptop and whatever it's needed for the job. There might also some budget for the desk for some like furniture if you don't have any, and then after that we do, and typically this goes to, you have a big meeting where somebody explains you a lot of stuff about the company and how it operates, and roles and responsibilities and all those things. Little bit of induction to some extent on company stuff. Also all the various tools that we use for all the various processes. So I don't know. I'm not excited about any of them, to be honest, but it's necessarily evil. So, you want to put your expenses somewhere, right? Now, should you like the expense software? Probably not, right? So there is that stuff. And we use Expensify. It's pretty nice, but still, it's work that you don't like doing. There is after that, what we do is you are being offloaded to your line manager. And your line manager typically might even be somebody which is kind of temporary for after we hire somebody, we typically have them working on something internal. You can call it the bench, you can call it, whatever. Our business, we build JavaScript things we build things with JavaScript for other companies. So we have them joining. We have people when after they join, we have them joining the bench, essentially working on internal products or internal things, or working on open source. So we are a few of us on these managing the hiring pool, essentially the new recruits. And so I'm typically one of the people that that ends out open source tickets, open source issues for people to fix. So when somebody joins or when somebody's back from a project, essentially they said, hey, what should you do? Well, Matteo, have you got some open source work to do? Well, it's open source. There's always work to do. So it's just a matter of directing people to build something that's actually helping somebody. I don't know if these help to answer the question. Hope so.
No, that was great. Thank you. So we've got four minutes left. So I'm going to have one quick fire question and then a rounding off one. So one question that we got in early was, how do you organize your time to be productive? Do you have non-bookable or anything similar like that? I'm going to have one response from you all very quickly. And so I'll give you a moment to think, but I'm going to start with Carl because he looks very pensive right now.
Again, as Matteo mentioned, this is unusual times with kids, so I tend to shift some of my hours actually at the moment in the afternoon and put them in the evening. But like my answer would be like be drastic on not accepting calendar invite or pushing them out when you become busy. Don't accept everything and just say, sure. If you don't have time to prepare for it, or if you don't have time to act on it, it's better to push them out and then try to gather some time in the day to focus on the things that requires focus.
Great. Be drastic on meetings and put some time in for focus. Daniele, same question.
I totally agree, and I'm gonna add use a lot of tools like use calendar inside Novoda. Use it extensively, even for not official calls. For example, what I mentioned before, the coffee chats. Put that one in calendar as well, so that if somebody invites you to another meeting, they see that you are busy in that period, and so the meeting is going to be declined automatically, or at least they can see that they should leave you alone.
Awesome. So be rigid on your calendar, as well as drastic on calendar invites. Okay, Matteo, over to you.
I pack all my meetings in one after the other, leaving typically 5 minutes of rest between them. And I tend to have most of my meetings early in the week and keep the end of the week light so they can actually get some work done. Essentially, if when managing multiple teams, when managing like having a lot of stuff, you can get into the manager schedule. If I need to get something done, very important, I'm actually like this is the slide that I have presented. I typically put a block in the calendar or a document that I need to do. I typically put 2-hour block on my calendar saying this is for that, and then nobody touches it. By the way, I've also started, because everybody is remote and everybody's and time zones and so on, I also started putting the lunch in the lunch break in the calendar. So because it was otherwise it was being cannibalized by people seeing, hey, this is free, so I can take it. No, it's not.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you all three of you, Daniele, Carl, Matteo. Carl, Matteo, thank you for your talks as well. I'm afraid that's all we have time for, but hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for attending. Like I said, I'm sorry if we couldn't cover your question that you asked. We had quite a few. We're going to be sending out a link to the video and the slides. There's going to be a little survey on how this went. We'd love if you answered it, but also a remote working guidelines that Novoda sort of tries to stick to. But yeah, thank you everyone so much for attending. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a good rest of your day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, team.
So much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.